Your family is toasting to a legacy built on the very work they stole from you. I'm breaking down the Lockridge betrayal, a story of power, patents, and the moment a good son finally stopped lying. Watch till the end for the move that changed it all. Subscribe for the truth. My name's Calder Lockridge. I was in my late 20s back then, younger son of a family that treated legacy like religion. New Year's Eve, I was alone in a shoebox apartment in Cambridge, sitting on a second-hand couch that creaked every time I moved. The lights in my window were dollar store LEDs I'd taped up 2 years ago. Nothing fancy. 3 days earlier, my mother had called with that soft, surgical voice of hers to say I'd upset the balance, and maybe it was best if I didn't come to the New Year's gathering at the mansion. Like I'd broken some vase instead of exposing a lie. Now I sat there watching videos from the party on my phone. That giant, white-columned house in Manchester, Connecticut, lit up like a holiday ad. Investors in tuxedos, big band music echoing from the ballroom. My brother Dorian, in a slate gray suit, drink in one hand, grinning like he owned the century. And maybe he did, for about 60 seconds. Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. Nobody said my name. Not once. Not in the speeches, not in the toast. Like I'd never existed. I looked down at my laptop. Axiom Diagnostics' dashboard was open. IPO filing queued to go live at midnight. 12 months of blood, spreadsheets, legal battles, and one heavy paper trail, all leading to this. Because what no one at that party knew, not yet, was that Dorian had spent the last 3 years trying to rip my diagnostic work out from under me and fold it into Lockridge Medical Systems like it was just another family recipe. And I hadn't gone quietly. With my lawyer, Leland Frost, and a sharp reporter named Saskia Bloom, we timed it all to hit at once, our IPO and her story, midnight sharp Eastern Time. When the clock struck 12, the screen blinked. Axiom's ticker went live. Then came the headline. MedTech founder alleges family IP theft in wake of breakthrough. My face under it. Subheadline said, Family pressure, undue control. Notifications stacked like dominoes. Investors, classmates, strangers. Then another alert. Noel Takeda's tech site with a bolder angle. A rare medtech founder willing to go against his own family. And that's when my phone lit up. The name on the screen, Dorian Lockridge. I let it buzz once, twice, picked it up. He was already yelling. What in the world did you do? Dad can't breathe. He's in the next room. People are calling my phone, Calder. Investors are calling me. What did you do? Glass shattered behind him, someone crying. I waited a beat, then set it flat, telling him I hadn't done anything new that night. I'd just finally stopped hiding what he'd done 3 years earlier. Let me back up. I'll tell you how it all started. I grew up in that mansion in Manchester, the one with the 4 tall white columns out front and hedges trimmed like they were afraid to grow the wrong direction. Inside, everything had a brass plaque or initials engraved in silver. Even the piano in the parlor had a little plate that said, Presented to Marlo Lockridge in honor of her charitable service. That house didn't creak or breathe like normal homes. It performed. Lockridge Medical Systems paid for every inch of it. The kitchen remodels, the art hung in the halls, the antique rugs we weren't allowed to walk on with our shoes. Holidays were catered. Summer parties had valets and brand-name liquor. Everything was polished, branded, bought. Dorian fit in perfectly. 5 years older, always clean-cut, already charming grown men by the time he was 15. He golfed with our dad's hospital contacts, learned which forks went where, and wore those tailored blazers like he'd been born in one. He could say a dozen words about nothing and make people feel like he'd solved something. The kind of guy who got pulled into private conversations just for being in the room. Me? I was the kid in the attic, literally. They'd converted the third-floor storage space into a study room, which became my hideout. Soldering iron, test tubes, junked electronics I pulled from eBay lots. I had more chemicals than friends. I loved it up there. That space smelled like dust and burnt circuits, not perfume and pretense. Our mom, Marla, didn't say I was a disappointment. She didn't need to. She just kept correcting me. My posture, my tone, my word choices. She had a voice like glass, shiny, sharp, and cold if you didn't handle it right. Around Dorian, she sparkled. With me, she squinted like I was something she couldn't quite polish. I remember a fundraiser when I was maybe 16. Our dad, Edwin, stood on that grand staircase holding a scotch and said, "Here's Dorian, the future of Lockridge Medical Systems," like he was handing the company down in a ceremony. Then he turned and waved at me, said, "And our younger one, Calder, he likes to mess around in the lab." The room laughed. I nodded like it didn't hit. When I got into MIT for biomedical engineering, I printed the acceptance letter and left it on the marble counter for them to see. Marla gave me a tight smile and said, "That's nice," then launched into a story about some hospital Dorian helped land as an intern. No celebration, no family dinner, just another paper on the counter next to credit card offers and stock updates. I moved into a 3-bedroom in Cambridge with 2 other grad students and a broken heating unit. That same fall, Dorian got a glass condo in Stamford, partly paid for by Lockridge, so he'd be close to headquarters. He had a view of the harbor. I had a fridge with a busted light bulb. At MIT, I met Dr. Corinne Alba. She had sharp eyes, fast questions, and 0 time for charm. She was the first adult who didn't smile when I spoke. She took notes. She pushed me hard, told me straight when my ideas were sloppy, and still gave me the best thing I'd ever gotten: belief. The early version of the blood test started in her lab. Just a seed back then, a pattern I couldn't explain yet. She told me, "Write everything down, keep clean records. Families and companies both have short memories." I did exactly what she said, and slowly I learned the real rule in our house. Charm closed more deals than proof. You could build something groundbreaking and still get told to stay quiet if it didn't fit the brand. For a while, I told myself that was just the cost of being part of something bigger. I swallowed it, kept my head down, until I didn't. By the spring, 3 years before that New Year's call, everything we'd been chasing finally clicked. Meadow, Jasper, and I were running test samples in our tiny rented lab in Cambridge when the patterns started holding. Our blood test flagged early markers for a handful of cancers: pancreatic, ovarian, colorectal, months ahead of standard panels. It wasn't magic, just a scoring protocol that filtered the right markers and ignored the rest. Quietly smart, nothing flashy, but real. We weren't some glossy startup with walls covered in buzzwords. Axiom Diagnostics was 3 grad school survivors living on grant leftovers and a small friends and family round. Meadow's aunt chipped in 10 grand. Jasper's old roommate sent 5. We shared takeout 4 nights a week and built our pitch deck between lab runs. The first investor meetings were booked. Real ones, not coffee shop maybes. Then the call came. Marla's voice, smooth as always. "Dorian's facing a tough quarter, Calder. It's time you did something useful for the family." She didn't ask what I was working on, didn't care, just framed it like an overdue favor. Instead of answering her, I called Leland Frost and asked if we could meet. We sat at a small bakery in Boston, just the 2 of us and a pile of legal pads. I handed over copies of my lab notes, early protocols, sketches, emails, everything I had. Leland didn't blink. He flipped through them fast, nodded once, and said, "You're ahead of where most people are when they call me. But here's the thing. If you ever bring your work near a big company, especially family, you protect it first and argue later." He filed the provisional patents under my name that afternoon. Every version dated, signed, and notarized. I remember him sliding a manila folder across the table. "Now you can breathe. If they try to erase you, they'll leave fingerprints. A week later, I walked into the headquarters of Lockridge Medical Systems in Stamford for my first consulting day. The lobby had our name in steel above the reception desk. People stood up when Dorian walked past. He had the presence of someone used to being listened to. I felt like I was 10 again, tagging along for career day. We spent 2 hours in a glass-walled conference room. I walked him through high-level theory, how our system avoided noise, how it learned from false positives without retraining the entire model. I left out the real algorithm, told myself I was being cautious, not paranoid. 2 weeks later, I sat in the back row while Dorian gave a pitch to outside investors. The slide deck looked polished, sleek fonts, confident phrasing. "Our upcoming diagnostic platform," he said, pacing like a TED speaker. Half the lines came straight from my early memos. One guy in a navy blazer raised his hand. "Who's the young man in back?" Dorian didn't miss a beat. "He's a research consultant we've brought in to help the team." Like I was some mechanic tuning up his engine, not the one who built it. After the meeting, he waved me into his office, shut the door, and slid a thick, non-disclosure agreement across the desk. "Just a formality," he said, "to protect the company." I signed it. Not because I trusted the paperwork, but because I still thought being a good son meant trusting your brother. That fall, we had another fundraiser at the Manchester house. Long tables, linen napkins, music from a string quartet they flew in from New York. Everything looked expensive and deliberate. I was placed down at the far end, near the catering staff's entrance, boxed in between two board members who only wanted to talk about how impressive Dorian's vision was. Marla raised a glass during dinner and toasted him for shepherding the next chapter of Lockridge Medical Systems. She used words like resilience and foresight. Not once did she mention me. Midway through the main course, Dorian leaned back and dropped it casually. "Of course, our internal diagnostic project is advancing well. Early indicators are strong. We've got brilliant technical input." Then he glanced down the table toward me, like a warning masked as praise. I just kept cutting my steak. I didn't say a word. The knife hit the plate too loud, but nobody looked. I wasn't really at the table, I was just seated near it. A few months later, he called me into his corner office in Stamford. Sleek glass walls, polished concrete floors, and that view of the harbor that was supposed to impress people. I came straight from the train station, backpack still on. Dorian shut the door behind me and didn't waste time. "Investors are nervous," he said. "We're close to locking a major round, but they want clarity. I need the full Axiom protocol now, not just the outline you shared. It's time." I didn't answer right away. He reached into a drawer, pulled out the NDA I'd signed, and waved it once like a playing card. "Anything you developed while advising LMS belongs to the company. We've talked to legal. This isn't personal, Calder. But keeping that method to yourself now? That's selfish." He had the nerve to say selfish. Then the door opened again, and Marla stepped in like it had all been scheduled. She smoothed her skirt and sat down without even acknowledging me at first. When she finally looked over, her tone was smooth and exact. "You're a Lockridge, Calder. That carries a responsibility. Legacy matters more than your name on a patent." I didn't argue. I reached into my jacket pocket, thumbed the button on my recorder, and let it run. Leland drilled that habit into me after the first meeting, just in case. I kept my voice calm. Axiom's protocol was developed outside LMS, on my own time, with my own team. The NDA protects your secrets, not mine. Dorian's expression didn't even shift at first. Then it hardened. He leaned forward, dropped the charm, and said, "If you keep pushing this, our lawyers will handle it." Marla folded her hands and said, "You're being dramatic. You're hurting your brother's health with all this resistance. Think of the pressure he's under." I stood up, didn't say goodbye. My hand was shaking by the time I got to the garage. I sat in my car, played the recording back once, then forwarded it to Leland with one line in the subject. You were right. The fallout came in silence. No more Sunday dinner invites, no messages about holidays. Just photos online, my family all smiling, Dorian with his girlfriend Tessa, even cousins I hadn't seen in years. I wasn't told. I wasn't needed. A few weeks later, Edwin called. His voice was tired. Be reasonable, Calder. Apologize. Stop making your brother's life harder. I was standing outside my lab when he said that, wind blowing hard through the alley. That was the moment I knew I wasn't part of the family anymore. They'd already decided. The call came on a Thursday morning. I was in the middle of rinsing out a coffee mug when Marla's name popped up. No voicemail. She waited. I picked up on the third ring. Christmas this year will be just immediate family and key partners, she said, smooth as always. We're keeping it a smaller circle. Given everything going on, I think it might be a good time for you to take the chance to rest. Stay in Cambridge. Regroup. She didn't say I wasn't invited. She just built a fence out of tone and words and expected me to quietly stand on the other side of it. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the fake tree Jasper had dragged up the stairs and set in the corner like it was supposed to mean something. A strand of lights blinked slow and uneven. The thing leaned left, like even it was tired of pretending. After she hung up, I opened my laptop and saw the email. Subject line, Axiom feature, ethics angle opportunity. It was from Saskia Bloom's editor. They wanted to do a deep dive profile, focus on ethics in medtech. They'd heard rumblings. They wanted to know if I was open to going on record. I met Saskia that Saturday at a coffee shop in Back Bay. She had a worn notebook, dark circles under her eyes, and didn't waste time. I slid a folder across the table. It had everything: patent filings, time-stamped emails from Dorian, and the transcript Leland had typed up of the Stanford office meeting. I told her I was ready. The next week, I met Corinne Alba near MIT. She listened to the whole story while her tea went cold. No interruptions, no expressions. When I finished, she said, "If you're doing this, I'll write a formal statement. I saw the method forming long before your family ever took an interest." Back at the lab, I told Jasper and Meadow what I wanted. For Saskia's article and our IPO announcement to go live together, midnight on New Year's. Jasper paced. "You're lighting a match right before launch. What if it scares off half the backers?" Meadow didn't even blink. "Forget the investors. Are you ready to carry this when it all hits? Your name's going to be everywhere, good and bad." While we were fighting about that, Meadow flagged something worse, false positives showing up in one specific test cohort. It wasn't dramatic, but it wasn't clean. We argued for hours. I wanted to push forward. She said we needed to pause. By midnight, I gave in. Next morning, I called Harlan Beach myself. Told him we were pausing the pilot deal. Explained exactly why. A week later, I flew to Sand Hill Road and sat across from him in his office. He flipped through the flag data, then through Saskia's draft questions. Finally, he said, "If what you've got holds up, I'll back your IPO timing, even your public statement. But the evidence has to be airtight." It was Leland who gave me the clearest framing during a late-night meeting at his office. He leaned back in his chair, rubbed his jaw, and said, "You can stay quiet and let them write the story, or you can speak and live with the noise. Either way, you're going to lose something. Decide what you're willing to lose." I looked him in the eye and said, "I already lost the part that matters." The last few days of December felt like walking a tightrope over a drop I couldn't see the bottom of. Saskia was sending emails at 2 a.m. with last-minute fact checks. Leland flagged one more patent cross-check just to be safe. Meadow and Jasper were still hammering at the data bug. We thought we'd contained it, but they weren't letting anything slip. We were all running on caffeine and adrenaline and the knowledge that none of us were going to sleep easy until the clock hit midnight on the 31st. Then I got the anonymous email. It came from a Lockridge Medical Systems address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no message, just 3 attached slide decks. I opened them and stopped breathing for a second. The title said Lockridge Early Screen, Internal Investor Preview. Every diagram inside was a cleaned-up, corporate-polished version of mine. The scoring breakdown, the visual pipeline. Even the markers were labeled in the same shorthand I'd used in early drafts. I forwarded them to Saskia, then to Leland. Later, I'd learned the sender was a project manager named Alina Shaw. We'd never spoken. She just couldn't keep quiet anymore. Saskia built her piece around those slides. Side-by-side visuals. My patent filings on the left. LMS's internal innovation materials on the right. She didn't need to editorialize. The images did the work. A day before launch, Marla called again. We're hosting New Year's at the house. It's primarily a professional function this year. A lot of hospital leaders, investors. Given the tension, it might muddy the mood if you attended. This time, I didn't sugarcoat my response. You don't need to worry, I'm not coming. I hung up before she could dress it up in another velvet glove. That afternoon, Noel Takeda emailed. Said he wanted to run a short video segment right after Saskia's article dropped. Just a clipped interview, no drama, just facts. I told him I was game, as long as he kept it tight and stayed out of the weeds. We mapped it all down to the minute. Axiom's IPO filing would go live at 11:59 Eastern. Saskia's article would publish at midnight. Noel's segment would post seconds later. It wasn't about creating noise. It was about syncing the story with the moment our work officially stepped out of the shadows. New Year's Eve, I was back in my apartment. Same couch, same string of crooked lights. My laptop was open to the market portal. My phone showed Dorian's social feed. The Manchester house was glowing. People in tuxes clinking glasses in front of the fireplace. Dorian with a champagne flute, laughing with a hospital group CFO I recognized from trade news. Marla, flawless in a dark dress. Edwin looked thinner than I remembered, but he was still there, still suited up. On the TV, the countdown started. 10, 9, 8. Fireworks cracked over the park outside my window as the page refreshed. Axiom's first traded price loaded. Then Saskia's headline. A founder choosing ethics over legacy. My phone buzzed non-stop. Leland. It's live. Harlan. Strong early reaction. Proud of you. Then Dorian's name lit up on the screen. I answered. There was shouting, glass breaking, somebody crying in the background. You did this, he snapped. Investors are calling me on my personal phone. Dad can't breathe. What did you do? I said, calm as I could. I didn't do anything to you tonight, Dorian. I just stopped lying for you. That was the moment. That line, that truth, is the one everything else will trace back to. The first morning of the new year, I stood in my kitchen, wide awake on no sleep, pouring coffee with one hand while the other scrolled through messages I couldn't keep up with. Emails, texts, DMs from platforms I didn't even remember signing up for. Old classmates saying they'd always known I had it in me. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in 10 years asking if I really meant to humiliate Dorian that way. One cousin, flat out, Marla's devastated. You've ruined Dorian's life. Was it worth it? I didn't answer any of them, just kept scrolling. Around 10, I clicked a live stream link someone had sent. Lockridge Medical Systems was holding a press conference. The stream opened on Dorian standing at a podium in Stamford. His suit looked slept in. His collar was wrinkled. He looked like someone had yanked him out of a meeting and shoved him under a spotlight. First off, he said, clearing his throat, this is all a misunderstanding, a family matter that's been spun into something more dramatic than it really is. Reporters didn't let that slide. What about the patent timestamps? One asked. Did you ever receive direct consent to use the Axiom protocol? Can you clarify what you meant by, we need the full diagnostic protocol, as heard in the leaked office recording? He dodged, danced around the language, called it collaborative gray area, said he understood the confusion. But then one voice cut through. So are you saying your brother falsified those documents? He froze, blinked hard, then shoved the mic aside and said, This press conference is over." The clip went viral in less than an hour. Noel's site ran it first, then half a dozen others. Most of them cut it down to 15 seconds, just the question, the silence, and Dorian walking off stage. That night, LMS released a formal statement. Dorian Lockridge, suspended as CEO pending an independent review. Signed not by Edwin or Marla, but by Gareth Pike, a name I didn't know yet. Later that week, Gareth emailed me directly, apologized for what I'd been put through, asked if I'd be willing to walk the board's legal team through my documentation, said he'd make sure I was treated with respect and that everything stayed on record. Not long after that, I got a message from Alina Shaw. She introduced herself as the person who'd sent the internal decks, said she didn't want credit or trouble, just couldn't sit on it anymore. "I've got 2 kids," she wrote, "and a mortgage. I'm scared. But I couldn't be part of this lie. Please don't forget about the people who just work here." The second wave of coverage hit a few days later. Investor Rowan Leeds forwarded Saskia a copy of the original pitch deck Dorian had sent their fund, before I'd ever seen LMS's involvement. She ran another article, this one laying his materials next to my patent diagrams. No commentary, just side by side. The comparison said enough. Then came the contract news. A regional hospital network canceled a deal with LMS, more than $20 million, citing ethical concerns. I found out from a headline like everyone else. That night, I sat on my couch, watching the lights blink on the little tree Jasper had left behind, reading another message from Alina. "The team's scared," she wrote. "Some of us are worried we won't make rent next month." I didn't know what to say. I still don't. There's a line between telling the truth and watching people who never held the knife take the hit for it. And I was right there, straddling it. Marla didn't call. She emailed. Subject line: "Let's talk face to face, as adults." I replied the same day but set the rules. It happens in public, busy place, Boston Cafe, not the house, not Stamford. She agreed. We met at a corner spot in Beacon Hill that served overpriced espresso and had too many mirrors on the walls. She walked in wearing a navy coat that probably cost more than my rent and heels that didn't make a sound. Hair pinned up tight, lipstick perfect. She looked older, thinner maybe, but still polished like she was heading to a charity gala, not cleaning up a corporate scandal. She ordered sparkling water, sat down, and opened with, "Dorian made mistakes." Then she looked at me over the rim of her glass. "But going public was betrayal, Calder, of the family, of your father." I didn't flinch. She shifted gears quick, got into negotiation mode like she was back on a donor call. "What would it take for you to help us put this behind us?" She laid out the offers. A lump sum payment to settle everything. A vague promise about finding a strategic role for Dorian at Axiom once the dust settled. A future board seat for me at Lockridge Medical Systems, tied to a joint public statement softening the narrative. No admissions, just carefully shaped language. I looked her in the eye. "No to all of it. I'm not rewriting the facts, and I'm not apologizing for protecting my work." Her mouth tightened. The charm peeled off in one blink. "You're choosing strangers on the internet over your own blood? One day you'll regret that." "No," I said. "I already did, for years." 2 days later, my phone rang. Edwin. He didn't do the usual polite warm-up, just said, "I always suspected what Dorian was presenting was yours." He paused, then added, "I didn't say anything because I couldn't face another fight with your mother. That's on me." I sat on the fire escape outside my building, listening to his breath catch a little, like the words weighed more than he expected. Then he told me something I didn't see coming. "When I was your age, my father pushed a surgical tool he didn't invent. Took the credit from a guy on his team. I knew, and I stayed quiet. Told myself it was business. You're the first one in this family who didn't swallow that." He hung up not long after. No apology. but the crack in his voice was real. A week later, Leland and I flew to New York. Gareth Pike met us at the LMS boardroom with outside counsel present. We walked them through every document, emails, recordings, patents. They nodded, took notes, and said they'd be initiating a full ethics audit and rewriting how internal contributions were tracked, credited, and protected. Meanwhile, Meadow flagged something back at Axiom. The data bug we thought we'd resolved was still showing up, in a narrow slice of patients this time, and we were 4 days out from signing a major European contract. We sat in our small conference room, just me, Meadow, Jasper, and our regulatory advisor. No whiteboards, no spin, just the facts. I made the call. I picked up the phone, dialed the partner myself, and told them everything. We've caught something. It's not big, but it matters. We're pausing until we're sure. Harlan emailed me 2 hours later, said he was frustrated, but ended with this. This is exactly the kind of call that separates a founder from a fraud. Investors don't need perfection. They need honesty. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just reacting to my family anymore. I was building something different, something clean, even when no one else was watching. I was in the middle of writing follow-up notes from our latest pilot trial when my phone buzzed. It was a link from Jasper. No text, just a URL. I tapped it. It took me to a long statement Dorian had posted on one of those professional networking sites. Full name, full title. No lawyers speaking for him, just him. I scrolled through it slow. He admitted to using my research and investor pitches without credit. Said he let pressure and pride cloud his judgment. He admitted to pushing for internal ownership of work he hadn't built, called it a mistake, framed it, of course, as a misguided attempt to stabilize the company during a period of volatility. Said he thought he was saving LMS. Then he wrote the line that finally rang true. In hindsight, it wasn't about the company. It was about ego. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel much at all. Just a little lighter. Like someone had finally opened a window in a house full of smoke and said, yes, it was real. A few days later, Gareth called. We were reviewing a dry compliance checklist when he said, almost like a throwaway, before Dorian stepped down, he actually supported a proposal to pursue an arm's-length partnership with Axiom. Transparent terms, no strings. Said it was time to stop fighting you. I didn't say anything. I just noted it, logged it away. That same week, Alina forwarded me an internal memo from Edwin. Official company communication. Edwin Lockridge returning as interim CEO. Ethics consultants being brought in. Full review of how research credit and IP were tracked inside LMS. No flowery language, just actions. Then Edwin called. His voice was lower this time, tired, honest. I'm not calling as your father doing damage control, he said. I'm calling as a CEO asking someone who's seen our blind spots firsthand if you'd consider consulting on cultural change. Not now, but when you're ready. I told him maybe, but not inside that building. Not yet. That month, I met Dr. Nia Redmond at a conference in Boston. She ran the Ethics and Innovation Summit. After my panel, she pulled me aside and said, "You have a story. People need to hear it." So I gave a keynote. Stood on a stage in front of a room full of researchers, medtech founders, and legal teams. I didn't dress it up. I told them straight how keeping the peace almost cost me everything. How silence, even when it feels like survival, is still a kind of permission. How you write things down, file what's yours, and hold the line even when it costs you, especially then. At the end, the applause didn't feel like praise. It felt like recognition. People stood up because they'd been there, or were still there. Afterward, the messages poured in. A biotech founder who'd let her advisor take full credit for her idea. A junior researcher who finally had proof his work had been lifted. A physician who walked out of a toxic partnership because he saw what staying quiet had done to someone else. One more came from Tessa, just a short message. I left a while ago, quietly. I hope he finds help. I'm glad someone finally said what we all felt. New Year's Eve again, this time in San Francisco. I'd moved west to be closer to Axiom's main office. My apartment wasn't huge, but it had a view of the bay if you leaned far enough over the balcony. Inside, the floor was covered in takeout containers, empty cans, and shoes kicked off in every direction. Jasper was halfway through defending The Thing as the only acceptable movie for the night, while Meadow stood by the window threatening to veto it with a rom-com just to spite him. It was loud, messy, good. Since that first wild year, we'd signed a major rollout with Johns Hopkins and a few other systems. Not because we chased it fast, but because we slowed down. We triple-checked the protocol that once scared us, tore through every line of the scoring model, and passed on 2 big offers when the science wasn't solid enough yet. We learned how to wait, even when money said don't. Earlier that day, I'd gotten a text from Edwin, short and careful. Happy New Year, Calder. I'm stepping back from LMS soon. Would like to visit sometime, just as your father. I told him maybe. I was polite. But I made it clear, any visit would happen on my terms. I hadn't heard from Marla. Dorian had kept his distance, which worked for both of us. At this point in my life, I'd made peace with the quiet. A few minutes before the countdown, I stepped into my home office and closed the door behind me, sat down, opened the recording app, and looked straight into the camera. I told the story you've just heard, direct, no sugarcoating. And I said this because it matters. Any scene I've described in a boardroom or office where I wasn't physically present came from hard sources. Board minutes Gareth shared, notes Alina sent, public statements, archived video. I didn't guess. I stitched together what was documented. People ask if I regret it, if exposing what my brother did was worth it, knowing it cost me my family. Here's the truth. You can't lose a family that already decided you were optional. If I'd stayed quiet, I would have lost my work, my name, and the way I sleep at night. Looking back now, I'm way more afraid of what I would have let slide than of any holiday table I don't get invited to. So here's my advice. Write things down. File the patents. Save the emails. Record the meeting when your gut tells you to. And never assume a last name or a company logo means your contribution is safe. Because there's a different kind of inheritance. The one where you stop the story from repeating. Where you build something that gives credit to the lab tech who actually did the work. If you're listening, and you've drawn a line, with a boss, a parent, a partner, share your story. Choosing your integrity over someone else's comfort is lonely for a while, but it's the only way you get to keep yourself. Before I let you go, when someone close crosses your line, do you stay quiet or speak up? Tap hype if you have it, subscribe, like, and comment.